Jay Steinley over there holding down the fort.
We're going to go live in just a few seconds.
Thank you. I'll use the gavel. I am not Chauncey Goss, but I will preside over and call the public hearing on the fiscal year 2021-22 final millage rates and final budget agenda to order. First thing we'll do is perform a roll call. Start with Mr. Bergeron.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Butler.
I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Goss.
I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Martinez. We'll come back. Ms. Meads,
Here.
Colonel Roman,
Here.
Ms. Thurlow-Lippisch.
Present.
Thank you. And Mr. Wagner.
Here.
Mr. Martinez, are you there? Okay, we'll come back. And I am present. We will say the Pledge of Allegiance. Since I'm here in person, I'll start.
To the flag
Flag.
of the United States,
United
of
States
America,
of America.
and to the republic,
And public for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Jay, this is Charlie, and I'm here.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. Mr. Martinez is on. Want to welcome everybody to the public hearing on the final millage and budget for fiscal year 21-22. The meeting will be live streamed today. Board members, since majority of you are participating via Zoom, please unmute yourself and state your name when you would like to speak, and also when making or seconding a motion, please state your name first. For the members of the public who wish to address the board, you may use the raise a hand feature in Zoom. If members of the public are having any trouble and need help, staff is available to assist you. You can call 561-686-8800, press 6, or go to the website sfwmd.gov and click the Ask Us button at the top of the page. If you're using a phone and like to comment, please press *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. We'll take public comment first from those who are here in person and submitted a comment card, followed by those who raised hands on Zoom. Rosie, anybody here in person or on Zoom?
First, can we take the agenda revisions, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, pardon me. Are there any, Rosie, any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll take agenda item extensions by board members. I'll ask that question if any board member needs to abstain. Mr. Bergeron, start with you.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Butler.
I don't have any.
Thank you, Mr. Goss.
I have none.
Thanks, Mr. Martinez.
None.
Thanks, Ms. Meads.
None.
Thanks, Colonel Roman.
I have none.
Thanks, Ms. Thurlow-Lippisch.
I have none.
Thank you. And Mr. Wagner.
I have none.
And I have none as well. So now we'll go to public comment. And Rosie, are there any comments submitted or raised hands?
We have one raised hand, and that is Dan DeLisi. Mr. DeLisi, you recognized to speak.
Unmute. Okay, can you all hear me?
Hear you, Mr. DeLisi.
All right, and just to confirm, this is on the, speaking on the millage. This is the time to do that, right?
Yes, Mr. DeLisi.
Okay, so thank you for this opportunity to speak. Just to be clear, I'm not here on behalf of anyone, just myself as a former board member and former chief of staff who truly believes himself to be a pretty hardcore fiscal conservative. So honestly, I feel awkward being the guy who needs to stand up and shout that the emperor has no clothes. But I'm truly disappointed that you all have decided to yet again adopt a rollback rate. There was a time a decade ago when the Water Management District was running huge surpluses and we needed to cut back. But those days are long gone, and I would defy you to find another state agency that is as lean as the South Florida Water Management District. But the problem is it's much worse than that. For years, you've been building larger and larger deficits in O&M and not providing the services to the level that you should because you don't have the resources to do what you are mandated to do. And this disparity is only increasing as you look to build more restoration projects and address sea level rise. This is the type of decision that at some point down the road gets you into trouble. It doesn't serve you well, and it definitely does not serve the governor well. Continuation millage is not a tax increase, and I would defy you to find me another Republican county or city anywhere in Florida that has consistently levied rollback rate every single year for the last decade with not even a partial continuation millage. And none have been criticized for any single vote on a continuation millage. They know a continuation millage is not a tax increase in reality, regardless of what the statutes say. Calling a continuation millage a tax increase is the same thing as suggesting that the governor and the legislature are increasing taxes year in and year out because we levy the same sales tax rate, but because people's purchasing power has increased, they're paying more in taxes as they spend more. When I was the chief of staff 6 years ago, I was explaining our budget and our decision to do a full rollback rate to a rabid fiscal conservative on one of our city councils. His comment to me when he heard how we were shedding some of our responsibilities in order to do our rollback was he was a fiscal conservative, but I was just being irresponsible. Doing this yet again for the 11th year in a row is just simply irresponsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLisi. Mr. Chairman, I do not have any additional raised hands.
Thank you, Rosie. I'll call Candida Heater, Division Director, Administrative Services, to present agenda items number 6 through number 12. Ms. Heater.
Thank you. And good evening. This is the second of 2 public hearings required by Chapter 200 Florida Statutes, TRIM, to adopt millage rates in a budget for fiscal year 2021-2022. The first public hearing was held Thursday, September 9th at 5:15. This evening, staff will request action on 5 resolutions pertaining to the budget adoption, and then 1 additional resolution at the end pertaining to the state appropriations. There are strict guidelines that must be followed in adopting final millage rates and budget. The first substantive issue to be discussed is the percentage increase in the millage rates over the rolled back rates necessary to fund the budget, if any, and the specific purposes for which ad valorem tax revenues are being increased. With the rates adopted by this governing board September 9th at the tentative budget hearing being at the rolled back millage rates, there is no increase in ad valorem taxes to be discussed pursuant to the statute. The final millage rates are as follows. District-wide, 0.1061 mil at the rolled back rate. Big Cypress Basin, 0.1116 mil at the rolled back rate. Okeechobee Basin, 0.1146 mil at the rolled back rate. Everglades Construction Project, 0.0365 mil at the rolled back rate, for a total combined Big Cypress Basin millage rate of 0.2177 mil in the Big Cypress Basin, Collier, and a small portion of mainland Monroe counties. These rates represent $21.77 per $100,000 of taxable value, for a total combined Okeechobee Basin millage rate of 0.2572 mil. In the Okeechobee Basin, 15 of 16 counties, these rates represent $25.72 per $100,000 of taxable value. The staff considerations related relating to the four final millage rates outlined as two on this slide, and on the following slide, two additional millage resolutions. And each must be separately voted on. Staff presents for consideration Resolution 2021-0924 to adopt final millage rate for district-wide at 0.1061 mil. Mr. Chairman, I turn the meeting back over to you for vote.
Thank you. And we're going to vote on each of these separately. Any board member comments or questions? Do you need to give us the resolution, or you just did?
I can read the resolution, or I'll just read the number.
That would,
So-
number is fine. Yep.
Okay, staff presents for consideration Resolution 2021-0924.
Mr. Chair, this is Charlotte. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Colonel Roman.
This is Chauncey, and I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Goss. We'll conduct a vote. Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Goss,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez. We'll come back to you, Charlie. Ms. Meads?
I vote yes, Mr. Chair.
All right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Martinez. That's a yes. Ms. Meads?
Yes.
Thank you, Colonel Roman.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Thurlow Lippish.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
And I vote yes. That resolution passes, number 2021-0924.
Thank you. Staff presents for consideration 2021-0925 to adopt final millage rate for the Big Cypress Basin at 0.1116 mil.
Any board member comments or questions for this resolution?
I'd like to move that resolution 2021-0925, and this is Chauncey.
Thank you, Mr. Goss.
And I'll second that. This alligator Ron Bergeron.
Mr. Bergeron seconds. We'll call that. Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Goss,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
I vote yes.
Ms. Meads,
Yes.
Colonel Roman,
Yes.
Ms. Thurlow Lippish,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
and I vote yes. That resolution passes 2021-0925.
Thank you. Staff presents for consideration Resolution 2021-0926 to adopt final millage rate for the Okeechobee Basin at 0.1146 mil.
Any board comments or questions? Can I have a motion and a second, please?
This is Charlotte. Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you,
Mr.
Colonel.
Wagner, I second.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. We'll call that. Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
thank you, Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Goss,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Ms. Meads,
Yes.
Colonel Roman,
Yes.
Ms. Thurlow Lippish,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
and I vote yes. That resolution 2021-0926 passes.
Thank you. Staff presents for consideration Resolution 2021-0927 to adopt final millage rate for the Everglades construction project at 0.0365 mil.
And for this, any board member comments or questions? If not, could I have a motion?
Yeah.
I'll move.
Go ahead, Scott.
I'll move.
Mr.
I'll
Wagner?
second.
Sorry, second was
Goss?
Mr. Goss. We'll call that vote. Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Goss,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Ms. Meads,
Yes.
Colonel Roman,
Yes.
Ms. Thurlow Lipish,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
yes,
and I vote yes, that resolution 2021-0927 passes.
Thank you. This portion of the presentation pertains to the fiscal year 2021-2022 final budget amount of $1,150,346,196 to be considered tonight for both revenues and expenditures. There is no change in the budget from the September 9th tentative budget adoption. The pie chart to the left illustrates the revenues. Ad valorem and state sources make up 80% of the revenue. And the pie chart to the right illustrates the projected expenses by program, of which 89% of the budget continues to support restoration and operations and maintenance. I am pleased to announce we received no comments or written disapprovals from the Executive Office of the Governor or the Legislative Budget Commission. Pursuant to Section 373-536 Florida statutes, the governing board may proceed with final adoption of the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. Staff presents for consideration Resolution 2021-0928, adopting the final budget in the amount of $1,150,346,196. Mr. Chairman, I turn it back over to you for vote.
Thanks, Ms. Eder. Any comments or questions from the board members? If not, can I have a motion?
I'd like to move 0928. This is Goss.
Thanks, Mr.
Butler will second.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. We'll call that. Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Goss,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
yes,
Ms. Meads,
Yes.
Roman,
Yes.
Ms. Thurlow Lipish,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
yes,
and I vote yes. That resolution 2021-0928 passes.
Thank you. That concludes the portion of the budget adoption resolutions. Now for the final resolution 2021-0929, the staff presents for consideration the recognition of the General Appropriations Act and prior appropriations in the district's adopted fiscal year 2021-2022 budget, authorizing the executive director of the South Florida Water Management District or designee to execute funding agreements with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and to request distribution, transfer, release, advance, and reimbursement of current and prior appropriations through September 30th, 2022. Mr. Chairman, I turn back over to you for vote.
Thanks, Ms. Eder. Any board member comments or questions on this?
This is Goss. I'll make the motion 0929.
Thank you, Mr.
This
Goss.
is Charlotte. I'll make a second.
Thanks, Colonel Roman. We'll call that vote. Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Goss,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
yes,
Ms. Meads,
Yes.
Colonel Roman,
Yes.
Ms. Thurlow Lipish,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
yes.
That's a yes. And
That was a yes.
let's confirm that. That was a yes. Thank you.
It wasn't my cough.
Bless you. And I vote yes, and that resolution 2021-0929 passes.
Thank you. And as I stated at the September 9th hearing, I thank you as the governing board and the executive team, and of course, the hardworking staff to get us to this point. Without both, we would not have made it. So I thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Cedar, and staff, obviously, for all the work on this, and of course, thank the support. We're lucky to have the support of the governor and a strong legislature to put these projects forward and finance them, in addition to the ad valorem support from Florida taxpayers. So thank you for that. Our next governing board meeting is on October 14th. That one will be held in Okeechobee. I think we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,